Hello worlds, and welcome to Bicep number 2, Piloting Gunnery and Tactics 202, the Advanced class. What this video is going to be is a very large and expanded version of the first Piloting Gunnery and Tactics video, and it's being made from gameplay footage that has a lot of sentimental value to me. This was the very last round played on my original PlayStation that served with me for over 8 years, and for its final performance I made the following footage. Like seriously, next day it just kept looping on startup, and given the system's known issues with heat management and video cards, it's safe to say that this was probably the last bit of video that will be made on that system. I chose this contract for exactly the purpose of steamrolling a difficulty 100 red multi-mission operation to serve as the backdrop for this video. Not just to showcase my skills, but to further drive home the efficacy of what I'm trying to teach you here, which is some of the secrets of some of the best mech warriors. Now, I know there are differences between tabletop and virtual, and occasionally I'll highlight those aspects, but this guide was originally meant to be categorized as mainly the ultimate battle mech piloting tutorial for both Mechwarriors 5 and online, supplemented and sprinkled with the occasional tabletop tip. The first secret that I'm going to divulge is actually a technique used by professional race car drivers mainly. And it's actually got roots very deeply cemented in me because, believe it or not, this was something first taught to me by my grandma. Yeah, the same one I talked about in the channel intro video. Seriously. She grew up in a day and age when driving was still kinda new to everyone and everything during the Depression era. And she sat me down one night just after I started driving and said straight up, if you're ever going to listen to me and do exactly as I say, please make this one of those. Many years later, I would discover that this technique was also used by police in advanced pursuit courses, by race car drivers of almost every discipline, and even military pilots. So as you're piloting your mech, your eyes should be by default on the horizon or crosshairs. But what you're going to do is about every 5 to 10 seconds, you're going to run a lap with your eyeballs. The first thing you're going to do is glance straight down. Why? Well, your tac map and your heat gauges are down there, and any veteran mech warrior could practically drive a mech with just these two things on the HUD if they had to. Now dart your eyes straight left from the tac map. That's your armor status. Now go straight up from there, and that's the condition monitor for the lance as a whole. Now note the bars, and at 50% that's when you need to start to worry, because internal structure is probably exposed somewhere by then. Another thing is the white bullet rocket looking icon. If that changes, that's bad, because that means they're probably out of ammo. Next, return your eyes to the crosshair. I do this both in real life in my car too, and its purposes are actually identical. As you're driving with your eyes on the horizon, you can glance down at your gauges, then left to the side view mirror, then up to your rear view mirror, and then back down to the road in front. This is so you can maintain the highest degree of situational awareness possible, and will also help you become very hard to get the drop on, in addition to being much more aware about your own condition and the lance as a whole. When you get into the thick of combat or otherwise mingling your forces, you can shorten this cycle to just glancing down at the map and temp gauge. And in reality, that's all you should have the time for anyway. But that's just enough data to keep you fighting intelligently. By keeping your eyes on the map, if any more forces are coming to join in, you'll be aware of it. And while you're down there, check your temperature, so you'll know if you got that one last alpha strike to give or not. Once again, professional race car drivers, veteran police and ambulance drivers, and even military aircraft pilot all have this drilled into them, and they do it intrinsically without even thinking eventually. And being that it has undoubtedly saved lives in their services, I seriously hope you'll start practicing this technique, as it could be life saving even in real life. Another thing about piloting that I want to say is as far as inputs go, genuinely everyone should just run with what they feel comfortable with. And don't ever shame anyone else for doing whatever they do. Me personally, I love the game controllers, especially ones that are categorically Nintendo or PlayStation in their shape. The reason being is simple. That's what I grew up driving these things with. And I have uniquely evolved in step with both technology in general and in the sense of the Mechwarrior and Battletech games. I played Black Knight and Mechwarrior 4 Mercs on the PC with just mouse and keyboard. And later I would be able to find a way that allowed me to use a PlayStation 3 controller with Mechwarrior 4. And that was an absolute blast, especially online. For the 2 years I was able to play MWO, I still used predominantly gamepads. The Xbox controller did have a cool home plate advantage and ease of integration, which was really cool. But fact is, you are still going to want the keyboard around for certain commands and tasks, especially when you have like 4 different vision modes. Because believe me, that sucks the cycle through, and that's why, yeah, the keyboard and mouse will always be relevant where applicable. Now, there's some tricks that can sometimes be exploited, and certain kind of just pre-programmed things that I've developed that will help save time and make life even easier. Some of this is general stuff, and some of this is check your make and model for compatibility kind of stuff. But it all adds up to just little things that'll shave seconds and give you some main character level speed. First off, this section is dedicated to and inspired by my near and dear brother-in-law, James. This is meant to be a solution to one of his biggest problems, and that's how to get lance mates into action quickly. Now, for us gamepad using kids, the fastest way to send everything after whoever you just locked onto is to literally just triple tap up on the D-pad. Don't even look at anything, don't even read. And I know anybody here can just hit up on the D-pad 3 times fast, right? Now, if you want them to go somewhere, up, up, down. Don't even think or read, just point the crosshair and up, up, down as fast as you can. You see, I've played some other games besides Mechwarrior, and if you grew up with a Super Nintendo in the house and never got to play the masterpiece known as Street Fighter 2, I feel kind of bad for you. But if you did play Street Fighter, you'll know exactly what I'm saying when I say you run the comms just like it was Ken or Ryu's Fireball Punch, which for the record was down, diagonal, and right or left, depending on the direction you wanted to send it. This takes an absolute minimum for memorization, and once you get it down, you can tune it. Just by knowing which mech in your lance is what, I know up, right, up means my missile boat's gonna start their bombardment, or up, left, down, and my brawler's moving in for the kill. For keyboard warriors, I'll have the whole lance button set to the letter J, and H next to it is the move, and Y is the attack. The reason why is the little braille bump on the J key lets me feel it, so I don't even have to look down. And if I have to use the keyboard for throttle, I'll be using E, D, F, and S right next to it. This way, my right hand does not ever have to leave the mouse, so I can always twist and shoot. And my left hand can just momentarily leave the throttle to issue a quick command. While we're on the subject of controls, let's discuss that, because long story short, there's 2 mindsets when it comes to piloting that are different, but also valid. The first school of thought is the battle mech is like a big tank, and the torso section is one giant turret. Now, it is genuinely valid, but it's also kind of limiting. The second school of thought for piloting is the mech is me. I am the mech. The mech is my body, and it will move and respond just as I would on the ground without it. This is that main character energy and exactly how you should be driving, like an absolute highway menace. Just because it's a vehicle doesn't mean it has to stay on the road or nice level ground. By the way, while you're driving like a menace, just remember not to drop your mech from more than about 3 times its own height. So do be careful with some of those mountain ledges. And remember, the Lancemate AI does not like doing that kind of stuff, and I almost always recommend sending them to your final expected point rather than having them follow you down, as the AI is then at liberty to just take the safe way it wants to, rather than risk getting them stuck out of fear or who knows else what. Now, yeah, some pilots will follow you down the ledge, but most won't, and I'd still be wary of the ones that did, because chances are they're gonna be bat guano crazy just like you. Now, remember, while you're out and about too, to always move from cover to cover, or at least find ways of keeping concealment between you and at least the direction the enemy is most likely to approach you from. And let's go ahead and talk about that cover now. Like, some of the best is rocks, trees, and buildings, and those are going to be the ones that you find just about all the time anyway. First off, special note, if you're ever stuck in dense woods, hold fire on your missiles and autocannons. Use energy weapons only. The reason being is the trees have a habit of either detonating missiles as soon as they leave the launch tube, and cannon rounds can actually ricochet, meaning at best you're wasting ammo and at worst you're hitting yourself or a lance mate. The lasers can burn right through the trees, so Smokey the Bear is just gonna have to suck it up as you blaze your ways through the vegetation. No, next, let's talk about rocks. I love rocks. They're rocky. And rocks are great natural shields for battle mechs. If you're ever in a location where high ground isn't an issue or possibility, the next best advice is to take areas with lots of big rocks, making that the next highest priority. The fact of the matter is they can afford your forces cover to absorb the blows instead of going at it in a blow-for-blow slugfest. Plus, the rocks, if sufficiently tall enough, can block missile locks and possibly give you the option of snugging up to them to completely avoid indirect fire. This can also sometimes be effective against artillery for a short while with the bigger rocks. Now on to buildings. Buildings and cityscapes are definitely asterisk areas because there are rules that apply literally just to them, especially in tabletop. Now in cities, once again, high grounds are king because in cities the angles can be sharp enough to drastically limit the weapons the enemy and you can bring to bear. Going into mega cities especially are one of the few times it's justifiable to headhunt and select mechs with jump jets to bring, as they're going to be the only units that can actually get to the high grounds regularly. Another thing to note about buildings is they may or may not have sufficient construction factor, at least that's what it's called on tabletop, to take much incoming fire. Rule is here, if you can walk through it, don't try to use it, as it's really only concealment. Because if the first autocannon round doesn't go straight through it, the damage has been done to allow the second to pass through. Also, when going into a city, remember to prioritize all of your gear for the short range. Brawling is inevitable in a lot of cases here. The last thing to add to this topic is the point and idea to evasive and offensive maneuvering. Now, typically everyone should be doing their best to avoid getting hit. Things like running in a zigzag and slamming on the brakes while you change direction are great starts here. But reality is you are going to get hit eventually, and ironically, the best thing you can do is just to keep moving. Not just the legs, but the torso too. You see, even pinpoint damage weapons can sometimes have their damage spread out some by the shot simply landing on an in between. And by spreading out that damage with constantly wiggling the torso at the very least, you can give your armor much more time in the field. One trick I developed was if incoming LRMs are an issue to run forward in a zigzag while keeping my torso sideways towards the incoming source. This reduces your profile to the absolute minimum while guaranteeing the damage is spread across the arms, legs, and side torso, robbing them of the chance of any focused barrages against the center torso. Some mechs can even bow down far enough that indirect LRMs can be directed to the back armor plate. That's useful as long as you're not up against Capellans. Now, when you're on the offensive, the best time to really approach and close in for the kill is when their internal structure is finally showing. Because landing a punch in that spot is definitely gonna break some stuff. And if you're lucky, the majority of their firepower can get wiped out. One thing that will take some time is getting to know the mechs you're likely to see and prioritizing their weakest spot. This is going to be best gauged as which half of the mech is carrying the bulk of the firepower, as any urban mech could testify, losing that one arm can make for a very long day. Some other mechs, believe it or not, the legs are ideal, and it may be easier to cut through both the legs than to even try drilling through their whole CT. Now, as far as any special and optional gear goes, try to prioritize getting the best optics and sensors you can get. Being able to see no matter how bad the conditions are, or at least having a clue of where potential threats may be, are essential tools for maximizing your piloting capabilities, as all the speed in the inner sphere won't mean anything without being able to guide it to where you need to be. Secondly, jump jets. Truth be told, if you can ever do full custom builds, yes, add jump jets. The maneuvering they give you can be priceless some days, especially in cities and non-terrestrial environments like Hoodoo and Tourmaline deserts. Plus, if it's a heavier assault mech, the DFA is always going to be a noteworthy option for you. Now, while we're talking about mobility, let's briefly touch upon mask and superchargers. You have to be smart with using these things. In tabletop, it's a roll of the dice you can usually pass the first turn or two, but after that I wouldn't suggest pushing your luck. On the virtual side of things, there's an interesting caveat that may or may not be applicable, because with a keyboard, hey, anything's a button press away. But it may be an awkward one for some. With us game controllers, you're going to have to cycle menus, and that means either stopping and making the conscientious decision and action to activate or deactivate the system, or leave the abilities menu up and forgo the possibility of any quick commands to lance mates. Now, this is generally a feature I don't go hunting for in either realms, as the cost in weight and space is actually significant. And by reinvesting the tonnage into a bigger engine or jump jets or anything else is honestly usually a safer and more reliable choice. On the bright side, they are great to have when you're acting as a QRF against artillery positions, or on the rare occasion an assassination target is trying to get away. If for whatever reason you just gotta have one of the two systems, do try to pick the mask over the supercharger. As in tabletop, it only typically damages the internal structure to the legs versus taking direct damage against the engine. Fact is, most of the time, this is excluding some light mechs, the damage done to the legs can be relatively little, meaning maybe, just maybe, it can screw up 2 or 3 times before it becomes a crippling issue. Whereas the supercharger applies a single critical hit against the engine, and you only have 3 of those. So by math, Mask is safer usually in the long run. In virtual terms, the supercharger applies its damage directly against the CT internal structure, and that's it. The Mask, however, spreads its damage across the internal structure of both the legs and side torsos in extreme use cases, which is really very cool because that's canonically correct and basically true to tabletop. That's another reason why even here, once again, Mask does remain the superior mode of upgrade for any of those that are feeling the need. Up next is guns, and I got some good data here. I'm gonna start with energy weapons because they are actually the simplest weapon in reality. There's 2 key differences dividing the energy weapon category truly. And that's, is it pinpoint damage or burn damage? Burn damage has also been known as spread damage, but I prefer the term burn because it's really better in its description on that. Now, let's start with the PPC, for example. The damage it causes is pinpoint, meaning that when that bolt connects, it's dealing the full point value of its damage instantly to that 1 or maybe 2 sections at most, before any modifiers get applied. A large laser, however, doesn't shoot that big, beautiful bolt of lightning. It shoots a ray of blue-white light, and it shoots it for a good second or 2. Lasers do burn damage, and that means the full point value is proportional to the length of time the laser was actively firing and hitting the target in that one spot. So getting the full point value from them can be tricky. Now, it should be noted that the short burst lasers available are actually an adaptation of the dialed energy weapon rule set found in the Tactical Operations rules for BattleTech 3rd Edition, which is a really cool crossover thing. Hopefully in the future, maybe via the engineering screen, we can just manually dial regular lasers to short burst, so we won't have to buy a whole nother laser. That'll definitely save us some C-bills. But anyways, the point to the short burst is they do their damage a lot closer to the pinpoint style, albeit with less total damage, but less total heat. Now, pulse lasers are kind of funny because they're pinpoint too, but that was done as a crutch to the fact that they're really supposed to work like a burst fire autocannon, firing multiple rounds in a burst. But there's a canonical glitch going on here that I felt warranted an explanation. In BattleTech canon, pulse lasers fire basically like machine guns, firing multiple shots very rapidly. But the fact was the tabletop game's combat system wasn't engineered to reflect this, as burst or automatic weapons either hit or don't, and if they do, they deal full damage. Now, pulse lasers in tabletop do get a negative 2-hit modifier. The idea here was to reflect that with the added shooting, the likelihood of the weapon hitting is also going to go up. Literally, accuracy by volume was the notion here. But in-game, even though visually it replicates the pulses, it does its damage in pinpoint fashion. And that, I have a feeling, was to reflect the tabletop rule set regarding the 2-hit modifier. They further tried to bring them more in line with the stories in reality by increasing their cyclic rate, so they were at least trying to reflect the original laser machine gun description provided in Tech Readout 3050. Now, the X-Pulse is basically trying to combine ER and pulse technologies, as pulse lasers lose range due to the loss of intensity in breaking up their firing rate. Now, chemical lasers are interesting. they are interesting because they're basically lost tech that was lost on purpose. You see, the very first lasers mankind made were of the chemical variety, and that led to the discovery of neon and fluorescent lighting, incidentally, in real life. Anyways, chemical lasers are an actually cool option, literally. The only caveat to them is losing the original point to even having energy weapons in the first place, which is the ammunition factor, or some could say the lack thereof. What chemical lasers offer is significantly reduced heat loads for the same amount and style of firepower. But once again, you're now relying on an ammunition source. In all due honesty, it's kind of like a weird hybridization of ballistic weapon heat to energy weapon firepower. But once again, I have to caution about the ammo factor. On the bright side, at least virtually, when the ammunition is struck, it does explode, but the damage is pretty minor, even with multiple tons involved. And it'll also kind of behave the way case would act too. Plasma is linked to this technology too, but it's just been amped up to be so effing hot that makes the heat level of the mech it's hit by go up too. And it can be drastic too. Truth be told, these are some of the greatest weapons against clan mechs for the Inner Sphere Tech Limited crowd. One last concern to add to energy weapons is the environment, or lack thereof. You see, when it's foggy or raining out, that cuts down on the damage a laser can do, and it's another reason why the pinpoint kind are often sought after. Here's another little real-life information drop. The word laser is actually an acronym, and it stands for Light Amplification via Stimulated Emission of Radiation. What a laser is shooting is basically light so intense it actually burns the material it hits. Unless, of course, you power it down for use in, say, some cool telecommunications or sensor technologies. So if there's anything floating in the air, be it dust, water, ice, smoke, or God only knows what else, that fine granular contamination of the atmosphere basically means that the laser's energy has to be spent on burning the atmosphere before it can be put to work burning your opposition. This has a dual effect of both reducing range and the damage potential of the weapon. Now, one bonus going in the positive here is that means in certain environments lacking any atmosphere, the laser can actually go further and burn harder. Due to the lack of oxygen or anything really, this means that they can do more with the same power. This is true to life physics for these kinds of things, which I think is amazingly cool, because they could have just copped out and forgot all that, but they did put it in, so God bless them. They're just trying to keep it real, and the Battletech and Mechwarrior games do actually strive to follow the canon of a very realistic setting portrayed in the books. Up next, let's start on missiles. I'm saving the ballistic weapons for last because this is a FedSun Steam channel, and I'm canonically bound to have to talk a lot about my autocannons, so I'm saving that for last. Now, missiles, like energy weapons, can be broken into two types, followed by two subtypes. Now, the first is short-range missiles versus long-range. Now, yes, there are advanced tactical Thunderbolts, Artemis, and all the cool ammo types, especially for tabletop. What I'm going to do here is start small and basic and work our way up to big and advanced. Now, missiles historically are broken down into short range and long range, and for the LRM and SRM acronyms. Now, an interesting thing happened while they were following the canon of the books. As in real life, some launchers are made different than others. And the main source of concern to the virtual Mechwarrior here is whether the system is a stream or a volley launcher. Volley launchers don't have any special designation, but the stream launchers are earmarked with the letters ST after their given size. Now, with volley or standard launchers, all the missiles are fired at once, whereas in the stream version of the same set launcher, they are all fired off individually, culminating in the description of that firing style in a stream. Now, both have their pros and cons, and that ultimately has to be weighed out by you. But yes, by simply changing the way the launcher fires, it can have an impact on what its optimized target is. For example, traditionally with my LRMs, I prefer to use volley-style launchers. But on certain remixes, streams are specifically noted and called for. The reason why is simple. Am I going for one giant solid knockout blow, or am I trying to create a constant bombardment effect? When by themselves or in pairs, fact is LRMs are going to have to rely on accuracy and sheer size to truly be damaging. So to help this along, bias towards the volley launchers. The fact is, by concentrating all the missiles together, we can create more pinpoint damage, and that's the best kind of damage. And if you're aiming for something big, especially, a good old assault mech, LRMs in set to volley are guaranteed to be felt by them. Now, there is a hitch to this. Basically, if one missile misses, more than likely, most if not all of them miss. And that's where the stream launchers come in handy. By staggering the launch of the missiles, if one misses, the next one or two or however many more you sent can try to compensate and actually land. This makes them ideal for fast-moving vehicles and also those PITA recon mechs that are just so far and so fast. But long story short, if used individually or in pairs, use the volley style. If you got like 3 or even more of them, use the stream. It is genuinely a good idea to get really good with long-range missiles. They're important not only canonically, but also tactically, because they're going to always be the longest range weapon you will have regular access to. Now, short-range missiles are handled ideally oppositely. By using the stream and combining it with their naturally more rapid firing and loading nature, you can make a missile machine gun effect, which is ideal especially if you're going for up-close headshots. Another thing too that I want to add is short-range missiles loaded with the Inferno ammo are genuine threats. Used properly and with a little bit of luck, even clan mechs will succumb to them, which is part of my own secret recipe for dealing with them. The fact is, on tabletop, an SRM-6 can deliver 12 points of heat potentially, and if it's affecting anything other than a stone-cold mech, it could possibly trigger an ammunition explosion concern, or at least seriously inhibit what firepower they can realistically use. Another thing of note is SRMs can be fired and hit targets as far out as 600 meters. You'll be mortaring them in a shower, but it's better than waiting for a PPC to recharge. These things have more in common with man-portable RPGs than something with a true built-in propulsion and guidance system. Streaks, however, do break this convention, and that's why you pay the penalties for them. But in essence, they're closer to a man-portable javelin or maybe even a sidewinder with the level of guidance and maneuverability they're afforded. Now, let's talk about Artemis. Artemis is kinda cool. Because of the way it's been incarnated across all the platforms, and what Artemis is for is getting the most amount of missiles on target as possible. Now, being that it adds 1 ton per launcher, if you got just 1 or 2, yeah, it's recommendable. But if you got 3 or 4 or more, I'd avoid it. Reason being is you're going to have to clear that 1 ton per launcher, and that's going to add up quick at that point. Secondly is, by that point you already have accuracy by volume, and the weight would probably be put to better use by stacking up more ammo or heat sinks, depending on which of the two was a more pressing concern. Artemis isn't just for LRMs, it is good for SRMs too. Its effect isn't absolutely streak-like, but when combined with tag, it just about is. And as long as the target is still genuinely in the crosshairs, the main benefit it'll give you is a lot straighter and truer flight. The main benefit it gives to LRMs is more pinpoint concentrated damage. Now, one thing to note on the missile front, and this is especially for the LRMs and streaks. I have to bring that up now because this is a big issue with these. There's one Achilles heel that is absolutely noteworthy, and it's something you need to think about before the mechs touch ground. Because if you're going into a megacity or a Hoodoo desert and you're thinking about bringing a standard issue missile boat like an Archer or a Longbow, you better rethink that decision. The reason why is LRMs and streaks both require a long, steady missile lock to be effective, and that lock has to either be maintained or at least reestablished in time for the missiles to hit. So if there's a lot of ground cover and target sensor contacts are extremely intermittent, those missile boats are not going to be able to very effectively contribute. Lastly, the munitions. If you have access to Inferno, Swarms, Thunderbolts, etc., I'll cover them right quick here. Firstly, Thunderbolt LRMs with that mine option, those are awesome for defensive operations. In defensive scenario, they throw an absolute monkey wrench in the attacker's plan because they either have to drag out mine-clearing vehicles and cover those while you're shooting everyone up, or just continue to charge forth and openly embrace the ensuing damage, acknowledging it as a tactical cost for their speed. Like I said, in defensive operations, definitely bring these. Next, Infernos. The first time I killed a Timberwolf or a Mad Cat most, on tabletop anyways, I actually didn't kill it with that much firepower. I killed it because of planning and a page ripped right out of the Warrior trilogy. You see, one Inferno by itself isn't much of an issue, but when you get 12 of them on target, stuff gets interesting fast. That Timberwolf had just lobbed a glorious alpha strike at me, fortunately most of it missing. But the javelin that I sent the long way came up to its flank and doused him with 24 heat in addition to the mammoth load from his first alpha strike. That turn ended with a glorious ammo explosion that even Clan Case couldn't really mitigate. And all that was left of that mech after that turn was the CT and legs, literally. Infernos are awesome leverage to combine with more purposeful firepower to drastically slow down or at least put a cap on what a mech could reasonably do for the next little bit of time. Swarms are great for times when you have crap loads of vehicles and infantry. They aren't very good in mech and mech combat. Lastly, in tabletop, one of my favorite combinations is Infernos with Heat Seekers. Yes, there are heat-seeking missiles available in tabletop, and when they're targeting a mech that's already on fire, it will make any game master's eyes roll as your min-maxing equates to just dominating the field. And now, yes, it is time. It is upon us. It's now the DACA part of the program. And let's be real, yes, this is a Fed Sons channel. Yes, I know, my autocannons. But fact of the matter is, in the trinity of weapons groups, the ballistics are bringing two things that the other two systems don't. First is a balance. Damage to heat, the only thing more efficient than the medium laser is the autocannon 10. Granted, there's a huge difference in weight. Not only are you doubling your damage to heat output, but you're also almost doubling the range in that payment. And speaking of range, thanks to the awesome physics engine in Mechwarrior Online and Mechwarrior 5, the fact is anyone with an autocannon and a brain can effectively start fighting at the 1 kilometer distance mark. Yeah, you heard me. 1 kilometer is a warm-up session to me. Fact is, I am one of those nightmare guys from MWO that, yeah, can start sniping at you from the 3 kilometer mark with a Gauss rifle. It can be done. Take some practice, but it'll definitely give you a drop on anyone ill equipped or lacking in the training and know how that I'm giving you now. So, for the first bit of the ballistics portion of this program, I'm going to give you some of the best shooting tips so you can walk those autocannon rounds out. So far, even partisan tanks will have to pass a crew morale check because you're out sniping them that hard. Yes, I have done this, and I caught it on tape too. It's on the YAML Console Cookbook, Episode 1. Anyway, here's the deal. I actually have a background in competition shooting. I've done a couple seasons of 100-yard PRS with a lovingly restored Ruger 1022. So my ballistic knowledge is a bit advanced compared to the average person. But it all boils down to simple physics, and if you've ever gone through the stats for each weapon, you'll notice that one of the last tidbits of data attached to all ballistic weapons, and even some energy weapons, is a projectile speed. This is a handy number to have because if you do have ballistician knowledge, that's a necessary number to have to generate your range tables with. And I'm going to share that data in a really nice and easy to understand format. By the way, to help you accomplish this better and easier, you're going to want to go into your HUD options and turn on the cooldown pip boxes. You're not actually going to be using them for knowing when the weapon's ready to fire, but what we're going to be using them for is a reference point for what is actually in the military called a holdover. Now, what is a holdover? Well, remember that projectile speed stat? Okay, now look at the maximum range listed for the weapon. The critical aspect to grasp here is the maximum range listed for the weapon is what is in real life ballistics called the maximum point blank range, or MPBR for short. At that exact distance indicated as the maximum range here, the projectile will start to fall. Therefore, if we hold the crosshairs over the target, it will give the round the extra elevation needed to hit. Therefore, the term holdover. We're going to start with the autocannon too, because that thing is seriously corked for long-range shooting via the projectile speed it gets. But see how it's got like an 800-meter range? Well, it can go almost 2 kilometers if you use the bottom of the diamond for the arm mount weapons as your holdover. Just a little bit south outside the diamond, in line with the top of the cooldown pit boxes, will land rounds out around 3 kilometers. See how we're using those cooldown pit boxes? Not for the cooldown, but as a visual reference as to how high to aim. This is how holdovers work and why real shooting scopes have multiple horizontal lines on top of each other. Those lines are for the holdovers, because redialing your scope for each shot, especially while getting shot at yourself, is just dumb. So just hold over a little high and start shooting. It's as simple as that. Now, as I'm giving you these tables, when I say at elevation, that means if you are shooting upwards at about a 40-degree angle. Then use the following table for that. The reason for that data is simple. If you're a fellow ballistician, you'll appreciate the notes and depths of detail. But even a grunt shouldn't be amiss to the fact that some battles take place going uphill, and also if you're seeing air assets move in, is a common window for engaging them from medium to long distance. Now, the AC-5 is as follows. The crosshairs are 5 to 600 meters. The inside bottom tip of the diamond is 1 kilometer. Top of the cooldown picks is about 1.25, bottom is 1.5. And at elevation, 1 kilometer is outside the bottom of the diamond tip, and 1.25 is the bottom of the cooldown boxes. For the AC-10, your crosshairs are set around 400 to 450 meters. Bottom outside point of the diamond is 600 meters. Top of the cooldown pip box is 1 kilometer. At elevation, the bottom of the diamond is now 500. See how much speed that shot loses going up? The top of the cooldown pip boxes is reduced to 800. Next, autocannon 20. The crosshairs are 300. Bottom of the diamond in its center is 525 meters on the dot. Cooldown pip boxes are good for about 700 at the top and 800 at the bottom. Just note the projectile speed when you're using this thing at distance. It's almost got the same ballistic profile as a grenade launcher, seriously. At elevation, I don't really want to know why you're shooting this thing into the air, but just in case you're dealing with something really messed up like a drop ship, cut the above table almost in half. Seriously, about 40% is what I'm thinking. These rounds are so big and slow, it's literally like launching a Mack truck to do the work. Now for Gauss rifles, don't ask me why the table's so detailed, okay? Let's just say shenanigans involving a black and white mech that requires bagpipe music whenever it shows up. Actually, I used to blast corn in that whenever the round started. Chutes and ladders counts for the bagpipes. Anyway, the crosshairs are set to 750 meters. 1 kilometer is midway between the actual cross and the crosshair and the diamond. The middle of the tip of the diamond is good for 1.25 clicks. The top of the cooldown pit box is 1.5 kilometers. The bottom of it is 2. 3 is off the scope, but if you want to try, imagine one more whole pit box down. That'll get you close enough to start. If adding elevation, everything goes down just by 1 step. Example, 1 kilometer is the tip of the diamond now. The cooldown pit boxes are good for 1.25 to 1.5. Now let's talk briefly about the one thing all these toys need to function, and that's ammunition. If you want honest 30 years Mechwarrior experience about what's the right level of ammo, I first gotta know if you're tabletop or virtual. Because the difference here is how the longevity of ammo plays out. In tabletop, 1 turn reflects 10 seconds of time roughly, and in virtual, well, everything happens at the speed of, oh crap. So for the tabletop kids, especially if you're tournament and you got that 15 to 30 round limit, I say yeah, just a ton or 2 ought to do it. Because you have that time limit and excess ammo is just wasted weight, especially if it could have been spent on more damage producing investments. Now for the at-home campaign players, I love you guys, and straight up I would say if it's an important to have weapon, bring 3 tons, maybe more, especially if LRMs. But if it isn't just one, try to chuck it for an energy weapon ASAP. The only exception is always keep machine guns around for battle armor and infantry. Those things are priceless when you need them. For the virtual side, I'd recommend between 100 and 120 rounds for AC-10s, 150-ish for AC-5s, and at least 50 to 80 rounds for Gauss and AC-20s. Double this if you have twins, and I'm serious. You'll note from this video I actually practice what I preach, and these are ideal numbers for when the day just so happens to get a little bit longer unexpectedly. Another thing that I want to add here is for the tuner kids. One of the coolest mechs I think that has been creeping up in the past few years are hunchbacks that are swapping the AC-20 for a Gauss rifle. That is very sexy, and I'd advise any tuner when you have an AC-20 to try to go ahead and free up that 1 ton more for a Gauss swap. It's almost literally always worth it. Yeah, you are losing just 5 points of damage, but getting almost literally triple the range means mathematically it's always going to do more damage every time out. The second reason I'd push the Gauss swap idea is the ammo. By weight, you're getting 25% more rounds per ton with Gauss ammo than you do AC-20. And there's one last devil in the details worth noting. Gauss rifle ammo doesn't explode when it gets hit with a critical hit. This is important because that's adding survivability to your machine the AC-20 ammo can't. In case you didn't know, the reason for this canonically is the fact that Gauss rifle and their cousin, the railgun, use magnets to propel the projectile, so there's no gunpowder involved with the ammo. All a Gauss rifle round is a giant iron and steel spike, probably with a tungsten penetrating tip too. But basically just a giant iron spike launched by a magnetic cannon. Pretty cool, right? This is also a weapon that may see use in real life soon. That's probably the coolest part of it. Another tuning note is whenever you can, go for the LBX autocannons. The fact that they natively shave off an extra ton is like getting your first clip for free. And for the virtual kids, this one's just for them, but I'm gonna address the whole burst fire versus single shot thing now too. Here's what we got. It's a situation almost identical to a missile launcher with the volley versus stream thing. But what I'm gonna tell you is, as a Mechwarrior, you do you here. You like one over the other, conveo de Dios, mi amigo. What I'm gonna remind you of is if you're brawling, the burst fire does make better sense. But if you're sniping, the single shot is the better tuning for those tactics. But when it comes to the AI, after spending hundreds if not thousands of hours on Mechwarrior 5, is the AI will do better every time out with the burst fire autocannons. This is actually culminating from statistics I kept on a whole company's worth of mechs. And I have a feeling that it's not entirely because of the accuracy. It's not like they weren't shooting either. It's the fact that the burst fire does give them a possibility of still hitting the target, whereas the single shot, well, if it misses, it misses. Now, me personally, if I'm brawling in a Centurion because my last console died and now I'm a refugee starting over, yeah, I'll always burst fire that. But at the heights of my empire, I had a Night Star with an LB-10X swap. Why? Because I'm still the designated marksman for the team, but even snipers need close-up defense sometimes. And the LB-10X actually complements the Gauss. Both of them having a maximum point-blank range that's almost identical, but the LBX does have a much steeper drop-off than the Gauss in range because of the lower projectile speed. But it does fire at a semi-automatic rate, making it great for close-in work with fast flames. Lastly, for this section, I'm going to go over basically 3 things. The friendly AI, your lance composition, and preparations. I'm going to start with a paraphrase. Sun Tzu said 90% of your fight has been fought before you even make it to the battlefield. And it's been fought via the preparations you've made. I forget the exact quote, but that was the bullet point for that one particular verse. Anyways, yes, before you go out, check your mechs. The big thing I want you to check is the weapons groups, as that's basically the fire control system, and its programming can have a significant effect on the efficacy of your AI. I'm going to describe to you here the best I've been able to deduce. Keep in mind that this is data from playing the game. I haven't actually cracked open any files in PowerShell or anything back quantum crazy. But the AI seems to run off of a targeting algorithm that works like this. As soon as sensor contact is made, it assesses its weapons group, starting with group 1 and going all the way down to 5. What it's looking for is which group has the range to reach. Being that multiple weapons can be in the same group, if that's the case, it will decide its role based off the average sum range given by that group. This can lead to some really interesting crap, as if you put a medium laser with an LRM rack, that seriously F's up the data, and those LRMs might not be leaving the launcher till it's almost in minimum range. So yes, you want to check that. Sometimes it will bypass that notion and fire the LRM with the medium laser because that individual AI actually gets it and knows the LRMs are all that's there that has the range, so let it loose anyways. Some of the AIs are legit better than others. Now what I'm going to instruct you to do here, and you can see examples of this in this video, but what you want to do when setting the weapons groups for the AI is start with the longest reaching weapons in slots 1 and 2, and go down in range as you go down the list. Always putting the hands in the last group, that way they have that option. Brawlers do love putting hands on target and will happily use them even on approach. Another trick and thing to note is about the chain fire mechanism. The AI just ignores that switch and everything in that group will volley fire together irregardless of your desires. But you can force a synthesized chain fire. If you have 3 or 4 of something, just give each of them their own group, and what will happen is as the AI is going down the list, it will just keep letting loose in that cycle. For a good example, refer to the pre-drop checks right here at the start of this very video. Another thing I'd like to stress is try to bias your hiring towards pilots with the highest potential level and not what their current levels are. Those pilots do get more and better things like the knowledge to use jump jets. Yeah, apparently that's available more to the veteran or elite capable pilots as far as the friendlies go. Not sure why, but I have actually seen the friendly AI actually do a DFA and the HMech. And was also smart enough to use them to follow me down a mountainside without taking any damage in the fall. So it's rare, but when they do it, it's totally worth it. I'm already missing you, Major Herd. The second thing to prioritize is the piloting skill set, not the gunneries. Those skills have the most influence over what condition the mech is going to be in when it comes back. Keeping repair bills low are an absolute winning idea for any mercenary outfit. Lastly, try to figure out if they're a brawler or a sniper. That seems to be the two basic categories of piloting styles. Brawlers are the ones that always close in with the enemy, even when you don't want them to. Snipers try to hang back, don't like to approach, and if they can't find cover or otherwise not readily available, they'll keep moving back and forth trying to generate a 2-hit modifier, even staying in place basically. Another good test is by sending them to a point and observing what they do when they get there. If they get there and after a couple minutes are still generally still, they're probably a sniper. But if they get there and after a minute or two start to wander around, that's definitely a brawler. Another thing I can add here is their story background can usually give you some sort of clue. Ex-military tends to gravitate towards the snipers, with the independents and drifters usually being the brawlers. Now, about my placings, facings, and tactics. Start with Googling up diagrams of what are called points of domination for small unit room clearing tactics. That will give you some clue exactly as to why I put my lance mates where I do, and why sometimes I do stare at the same chunk of property for a few minutes at a time. What I'm doing is making sure that if we're approached, there's already at least 2 sets of guns pointed in that direction, helping intercept any patrols or counterattacks, or at the very most contributing to the conquest actively by focusing fire on a given objective. Some of the best tactics that I can give you that you'll use all the time are the fatal funnel and running ambush. The fatal funnel is entirely dependent on the terrain, but long story short, the goal is here to find a spot where all the enemy forces are going to be forced to approach you from just one direction. Remember the mountain valleys and passes the Jade Falcons always had trouble with? It was mainly because of that, and a little bit because of the rocks. The rocks actually falling on them. But by using the terrain to make sure the enemy can't get around you or otherwise intermingle with your forces, you'll be able to quickly sweep them aside with focused fire one at a time usually. The running ambush is classic guerrilla technique, and it means you hide your forces probably about 600 meters to a full kilometer away. And what we want to do is position them where they won't be seen until the defenders are far away from home and just now rounding a blind corner. And that's when your guys blindside them. This is great for raids, but don't use it on demolition jobs, especially ones where reinforcements are going to be constantly coming. But by luring defenders out and into a valley and a full click away is guaranteed to leave that outpost practically deserted. And if it's not and does have a sizable force, this will string out the defenders, which creates a funneling effect similar to the fatal funnel, allowing you the time and space to address the opposition on a one-by-one personal basis. Now for some additional methods behind the madness, you'll notice in this video I'm actively not only exercising good soldiering myself, but I'm really making the squad put out as a whole too. And one of the key factors in them being able to do that is in their placement. They can't hit what they can't see unless it's being spotted for, and that only applies to LRMs. One of the biggest keys to piloting tactically I can give you is my lance tactics and placements are once again all derived from small unit infantry tactics, especially those used for urban room clearing. You see, I treat each map like it was a floor in a building that I have to sweep and clear or whatever else I'm supposed to be doing there. Mountains become walls, canyons are now hallways, mesas are pillars. That's how my tactical brain looks at the environment I'm in, and how I decide where, when, and why I move people to the places I do. Now my main brain knows that yes, I'm right here, right now, in an X amount of tons battle mech in a mountain valley at night during a thunderstorm, but my tabletop mode brain is working simultaneously in the background, viewing everything through the lens of being 4 infantry dudes trying to clear a big warehouse. Next, I'm going to give you the best possible general purpose lance setup, and this is a methodology as to what mechs to bring, because there's quite a few to pick from. Now, I'm not going to tell you which makes and models or how to remix kind of thing. This is using a much broader concept of categories for mechs to narrow down which ones, because everybody's got a different set of mechs to bring. Now, as far as you go, you rock whatever you're good at or want to be good at. Remember, you got to drive it to get good at it. And at the same time, remember, you have skills too, and you butch up those skills by actually using them yourself. Now, Bay 1 being whatever it is, that's your wild card. Bay 2 is going to have a dedicated brawler. I like to think of this as a combination of personal bodyguard and attack dog. You're going to want something really angry, especially up close. Really good examples would include javelins, wolverines, quick draws, and battle masters. Those are all categorically heights of brawling in their respective weight class. Bay 3 should have a sniper. Well, what's a sniper? Got anything with a PPC or a Gauss rifle? Definitely. Large lasers are a maybe. If they're extended range, yes, but regular's only a maybe. Autocannon 5s and 2s can count too, especially if they're doubled up. Good examples of snipers include the Panther, the Blackjack, the Marauder, and the Awesome. Bay 4 is going to get the missile bow. Almost always an LRM based one too. Unless it's a Hoodoo or desert or mega city environment, then the SRMs are totally justified. Now for light mechs, there aren't a lot of these, but there are Locusts with twin LRM 5s, and they aren't bad actually. Serious hit and run Guerrilla Kingdom. In heavier categories, the classic Trebuchet, the Archer, and the Stalker are all brilliant starts here. And now that I got you thinking in categories, remember that the pilots have theirs too. Putting a brawler pilot in a trebuchet is probably a bad idea, unless it's the brawling trebuchet, of course. Now, times to deviate from this are basically what you're doing and where you'll be. For example, if on a defensive mission in a Hoodoo desert, forget bringing the missile boat unless it's an SRM-based brawler. LRMs are near useless in that environment typically because all the rocks and tight valleys basically kill any shot for that long missile line. Matter of fact, for these in mega cities, I'd tell you to bring 2 brawlers and 2 snipers. Almost always. Or maybe 3 brawlers and you play a sniper if you want to be safe. Tourmaline deserts are almost as bad too. Once again, snipers are better here because even if they only see the target for a second, they still have a legitimate shot. Remember, you miss all the shots you don't take, and by being able to lay down more firepower, you will eventually do more damage. Also, these environments naturally conduct themselves towards making long, straight tracks of land, which are once again ideal for sniper. Also of note is, especially in the mega cities, even if you do get a lock, a building might still obstruct the path of the missiles. And that really sucks, because you're going to waste ammo just to find out you're wasting ammo. Now, because I got some time to kill, I'm going to go ahead and give you all my favorites right here. I don't want to make a separate video, and a lot of others have already made their own. And let's be real, with over 700 mechs and probably as many vehicles, plus battle armor, the virtual kids have yet to run into proto-mechs, and we also have air support from who knows how high up in the atmosphere. Chances are my favorites aren't going to be your favorites. But we can just agree that we all have some good picks or taste somewhere. Plus, guys, we are well over 20-something legitimate factions, and we have a timeline that's now entering roughly 750 years total. So keep in mind, going all the way back to the Age of War, pre-Star League stuff, all the way to the Ill Clan, there is a lot to choose from. So, as far as my favorite factions, well, we are a Fed Sun Steam channel, so number 1 shouldn't come as a surprise. That's because I do have some of those rose-colored glasses kind of fondness for the intro tech and clan invasion period, which was also still recent to Battletech, but was brand new to me when it dropped. Remember, this was before the internet, so even if it had just come out, it still might be a year or 2 before you saw it on the shelf. Unless you were able to mail order something direct, which could get interesting. The first pieces of fiction I got was the Warrior trilogy, followed by Decision at Thunder Rift, then the Blood of Kerensky trilogy. All of this was back around 1993. It was really cool when the clan invasion was new. There was a lot of what ifs. because a lot of their lore and background hadn't even been written yet. All that we knew was 4 invading clans were doing it with 16 really killer Omni-Mechs and a whole new level of infantry brought about by the introduction of elemental battle armor. So yeah, in the depths of my soul and being, I will always be a mercenary Mechwarrior for the Federated Sons. Team Bonsai and House Davian is a very unusual mixture of people, but they have a level of get-it-done magic that just won't be denied. And what mercenary wouldn't be enthralled by the idea of a literal regiment of customized one-off mechs? That was a big hook in me deciding what would always be my favorite faction and merc outfit. Fact was, they were legitimate engineers and genuine humanitarians as much as they were true mercenary mech warriors. By the way, as kind of evidence to some of that, is the infamous troll builds of the Javelin Battle Mech, involving the masses of SRMs with Inferno rounds and the rocket launchers. That all did in fact with Team Bonsai and was furthered upon by the Taurian Concordat. Speaking of Taurian Concordat, them and the Magistracy of Canopus are tied for my second favorite. Why and how could this be is because, well, spiritually, they are truly a brother and sister to each other. Yeah, they do represent polar opposites. The fact is, they really don't do much to hurt each other, and they've actually come to represent truly independent states that aren't focused on honor or what is realistically just conquest, but they're focused on taking care of their people, keeping them at least fed and healthy, educated if possible, and focusing on the long game of stability and what's good for everybody as a whole. Now, the Taurian Concordat, which is affectionately nicknamed Space Texas by some, does in fact emulate a lot of Texan ideas, and even a good chunk of their culture and values. The Magistracy, on the other hand, could be described as a very diverse socialist paradise, where traditionally marginalized communities, which could range from anything like your traditional LGBT groups to the more modern cybernetics rights organizations that have sprung up in the setting. But both of them have the same set of core ideas. We don't want anyone going hungry or homeless. We need to teach our kids at least reading and math. And we are surrounded by some serious a-hole neighbors who are going to try to take advantage of us. So we're going to want some mechs around too. That right there is why I can empathize with both of these factions, and out of fairness and the reality that politically everyone is a loser, I could never put one above the other. Purple Bird. I honestly think that the Free Worlds League is one of those things that actually probably will happen in real life. Just give it some time. Scary part is, if you think about it, if the BRICS nations join together and colonize the first planet outside of our own solar system tomorrow, we would have a very canonically correct start in real life. Just think about that. The thing that I also love about Purple Bird is the fact that they're usually busy dealing with just their own business and trying to keep their own house straight. And traditionally, they're more worried about turning a profit than conquering anyone else's systems. The last honorable mention is gonna go to Clan Sea Critter. I don't know if they're sharks or foxes, whatever the heck a sea fox is, but at the moment, I permanently refer to them as Clan Sea Critter for their affinities as a whole. Anyways, I'm kind of hopeful for this bunch. They're a lot more progressive in their civil liberties than most clans, which is really great. They needed that. part of the reason why I'd never be clan is after seeing the underbelly of their society through the adventures of Phelon Kill and his time as a bondsman as chronicled in the Blood of Kerensky trilogy, no. Just no. And then his ex-girlfriend, oh my god, decides to get mad at him and goes sleeps with her brother because that's clan, and that's a perfectly normal thing in clan society. I seriously had to reread several chapters just to verify, no, I wasn't seeing things or making this up. This was how the story is actually going. Well, it appears that Clan Sea Critter is striving to change clan society for the better, and by moving into Federated Sun's turf, are definitely making good strides in that direction. Hopefully they'll be the first real agreeable clan for all players, because they're trying to bridge the gap that perfect utopian society where everyone does their job and nobody has to worry about housing, food, or some BS bill, while still simultaneously allowing their people freedom to do what they want within reason and not turning it into absolute slave-like conditions. That is a very fine line to walk, especially given their history. But they're a lot smarter than most of the clans as a whole, and they don't seem to be falling prey to what could only be described as, this is why royal families have historically been proof that humans shouldn't be inbred. Now, for favorite mechs, I'm going to give you two groups. The intro tech specific one and the anytime, anywhere, any era group. For light mechs, my favorites are Javelin, Panther. Definitely Panther is an absolute favorite. The Firestarter, and Commando. If anything goes, give me a Fire Moth, aka the Dasher. The Uller, aka Kit Fox, is awesome. And the Hermit Crab is actually a signature unit of mine anytime I'm actually playing tabletop in the Ill Clan era. For mediums, the Crab is just absolute boss level. The Centurion is okayish. The AL variant, which is a laser boat variant, is definitely a staple in my forces. Vindicators are cool, and for the last slot, Shadowhawks and Wolverines. Honestly, the two hero editions of those two mechs are quickly becoming some of my new favorite hero editions. The Grey Death Shadowhawk and the Quarantine Wolverine, they're absolutely worth buying. If anything goes, the Crab is still coming. The 27 SL, that thing is an absolute beast. And, let me see. The Storm Crow. Oh my god, in Mechwarrior 3 and 4, yeah, that was the original DPS monster. We were developing the whole concept of damage per second all the way as far back then. Now, one last medium, the Hatchet Man. I have to do it. I love it. For heavies, the Thunderbolt, the Orion, the Archer, and the Quick Draw. I actually hate Marauders and Warhammers. They just run too hot. And if anything can go, give me some Crusaders. Timberwolves aren't overrated. So are the Vultures, aka Mad Dogs. And I'd be totally amiss if I forgot the war-winningest mech of all time during the clan invasion, the Axeman. And lastly, for the assault category, the Awesome, the Stalker, the King Crab, and the Battlemaster are everyday issue. If I mix it up, I'm gonna drop an Awesome or a Stalker for an Executioner or Gladiator, or maybe a Stone Rhino or a Marauder too. So that's it. Yeah. You have officially been armed with enough knowledge to at least try to represent the reason why the Inner Sphere will always need mercenaries. I hope this even gives other veterans out there pause and food for thought, because it was definitely an interesting question to ask and try to answer. And I hope maybe if I did give you any kind of pause or light bulb moment, give me a like or a share for it. Anyway, thanks for watching, especially you, Brother James, and for now, peace from New Avalon.